Hello, and welcome to Peace and Dharma. Today, let us embark on a journey into a world of calm reflection, one that leads us to the core of true peace through the lens of Buddhism. Have you ever paused to ask, what creates a peaceful life, a harmonious society? Is it wealth, power, or fame? Is it possessing everything around us? And when we pursue these, do we genuinely feel at peace inside? Every day, we turn the pages of news in search of a bit of good news, something to lift our spirits. But instead, we often face reports filled with violence, rivalry, conflicts, and turmoil. In modern life, peace seems to have become a luxury, existing only in fleeting moments or our imaginations. We turn page after page of ongoing events, power struggles, unending conflicts, wounds, and losses. So, what truly is peace? Is it a brief silence after a storm or a balance found through compassion and understanding? The Buddha taught that true peace doesn't come from external sources but from within us. Buddhism offers a path, the 5 precepts, as guiding lights in our quest for true peace. The 5 precepts are not mere rules but principles for living, a means to shield ourselves from suffering caused by greed, anger, and ignorance. Each precept serves as a reminder that we can change the world around us by transforming ourselves, by cultivating compassion, kindness, and authenticity. In a world of endless turmoil, it's easy to get swept up in the whirlpool of strife and anger. But as the Buddha taught, we each hold within us a seed of peace. When we know how to nurture and tend to this seed, it grows, spreading and bringing us a true sense of tranquility. Buddhism is not an escape from life but a way to understand life's essence and realize that suffering doesn't stem from external sources but from within, from our desires, anger, ignorance, and actions. Perhaps the grand conflicts of the world are just reflections of the small inner conflicts within each of us. When our minds are unsettled, we cannot perceive peace around us. True peace begins with inner calm, fostered by compassion, wisdom, and tolerance. This is also the essence of the 5 precepts that help people live fully and virtuously. If each of us begins by observing the 5 precepts, society will gradually achieve peace. The 5 precepts are not lofty or mystical concepts but essential life principles that keep our lives peaceful and serene. Today, let us explore each precept to understand how they can bring peace to both our souls and the world around us. Dear friends, let's begin our journey into the 5 precepts, the 5 principles of virtuous living, the 5 elements of peace. Through today's reflections, may each of us find a bit of serenity, a bit of inner stillness. And remember, peace is not something we must search for afar, it exists within each of us, waiting to be awakened and shared. Dear friends, each of us yearns for happiness, for inner peace. But have you ever wondered, what is happiness and peace? Why do we always feel an emptiness that seems difficult to fill? The Buddha taught that suffering does not come from external things but arises from our own minds. In life, certain things may seem like joy or happiness but often contain elements that lead to suffering if we do not understand their true nature. These elements are what the Buddha called afflictions, dark clouds that obscure our mind's clarity, leading us into an endless cycle of unrest and suffering. Today, on this journey, we will explore the origins of suffering through the Buddha's teachings. Each source of suffering will be illuminated, allowing us to understand and find ways to transform, to liberate ourselves from the chains of afflictions, and to seek a life of peace and tranquility. First, let's speak of cruelty, a significant cause of suffering and unrest. Cruelty can manifest in many forms, from the smallest thoughts to the most obvious actions. Cruelty is not always overt violence or visible hatred. Sometimes, it is subtle, found in jealousy, resentment, and even harsh words. It appears when we despise others, harbor hatred towards someone, or wish suffering upon others. The Buddha taught that cruelty is like a smoldering fire within each person. It is always ready to blaze when given the opportunity. And it burns everything in its path, causing suffering not only to others but also to the one who carries it. There is a story from Buddhist scriptures about a man who lived in a village and harbored intense hatred toward a neighbor. Due to a trivial conflict, he nurtured this hatred, plotting revenge day and night. Each passing day only increased his anger and bitterness. Every time he saw his neighbor succeed, he felt a sharp pain in his heart, consumed by jealousy and hatred that grew more profound. Eventually, as he grew old and his health declined, he realized that his neighbor was unaffected by his hatred, still living happily and prosperously. It was he who had suffered all his life from harboring resentment, living in the shadow of his own hatred without realizing it. Through this story, the Buddha wanted us to understand that cruelty is like a poison that primarily harms the one who holds it. When we harbor hatred, the first to suffer is ourselves. Such negative emotions do not disappear, they accumulate and grow, making our lives heavy and empty. In today's world, we see cruelty manifest in various forms. A person who is jealous and cannot accept the success of others will constantly suffer. When they see others achieving what they have not, it fuels their discomfort, leading to negative thoughts and actions. Ultimately, hatred and bitterness only lead to isolation and suffering. The Buddha advised that to dissolve cruelty, we must nurture compassion and learn to forgive. Forgiveness is not for others but for ourselves, to release ourselves from the burden of hatred. When we forgive and let go, our hearts will feel light and peaceful. The second cause of suffering is greed. Greed is not simply a desire for wealth and material possessions but also includes cravings for fame, power, and even possession in love. When a person always desires more than they have, they will never feel content. The more they crave, the greater their greed becomes, like an unquenchable fire. There is a story in Buddhist teachings about a king. This king possessed immense wealth, power, and many things everyone desired. Yet, he still felt unhappy, always wanting more. He did everything possible to accumulate more wealth, even oppressing his people to increase his assets. However, the more wealth he acquired, the more anxious he became, fearing he would lose what he had. Over time, this fear grew so overwhelming that he could no longer sleep peacefully or enjoy life. This story serves as a clear example that greed is never satisfied. The Buddha taught that greed is like a bottomless barrel. The more we try to fill it, the emptier we feel. Imagine a person who relentlessly pursues money, neglects family and friends, spends all their time working, and accumulates wealth. They may achieve their material goals but lose valuable relationships and precious moments. The more they possess, the more they fear losing it, and this anxiety only grows over time. When they finally realize it, they may find themselves alone in a house full of material possessions but devoid of love. The Buddha taught that to overcome greed, we must learn contentment. When we are satisfied with what we have, greed will gradually fade, and we will find happiness in simple, humble things. Sometimes, happiness doesn't lie in having more but in knowing contentment. The Buddha called this santosa, finding joy in what we have. When we are free from excessive cravings, our hearts will find peace and stillness, like a clear lake undisturbed by ripples. The third source of suffering is ignorance. The Buddha taught that ignorance is the root of all wrongdoing. A person without understanding is like someone wandering in the dark, unable to discern right from wrong. Living in ignorance, we are easily drawn into illusions and mistaken aspirations, which only lead to suffering. There's a story of a man who, out of ignorance, placed his trust in superstitions. He spent all his money on rituals to bring wealth and happiness, not realizing that true happiness cannot be bought with money or rituals. Only after losing everything did he recognize that his ignorance had destroyed his life. Ignorance is a veil that clouds our wisdom, preventing us from seeing the truth and realizing that real happiness comes from within, not from external sources. In modern society, many chase after fleeting forms of entertainment and distractions, hoping to find happiness. They immerse themselves in temporary pleasures but feel empty when the joy fades, as they don't experience lasting tranquility. This is because they are caught in the cycle of delusion, seeking joy in unsustainable places. The Buddha taught that wisdom is the guiding light on the path to liberation. When we cultivate wisdom, we will no longer be clouded by delusion and will find the correct path to true peace. Dear friends, in life, each of us longs to find peace and happiness. But as we have seen, life is filled with suffering, and none of us can completely avoid it. Suffering is real, but the Buddha taught that we can overcome it if we master ourselves and live by the true path. Among the practices the Buddha left us, he emphasized the 5 precepts as miraculous remedies for transforming suffering and nurturing compassion and love. The 5 precepts are fundamental principles of ethical conduct, like protective barriers that shield us from the causes of suffering and anxiety. They include refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and using intoxicants. Each precept is more than a rule, it is a lesson in compassion, honesty, and mindfulness. When we uphold the 5 precepts, we not only benefit ourselves but also everyone around us. They are a path to a joyful life and a foundation for a peaceful, compassionate world. The first of the 5 precepts is to refrain from killing. The Buddha taught that life is precious. All beings, whether humans or animals, wish to live and fear death. When we take a life, we not only harm another being but also spread fear and suffering in the world. The precept against killing is thus not just about refraining from violent acts but about cultivating compassion and respect for all forms of life. Compassion is the ability to feel and understand the suffering of others. The unconditional love we extend to all beings. When we live with compassion, our lives are filled with love, and every action we take reflects this kindness. There is an ancient story about a man named Angulimala. He committed many terrible acts, taking lives to satisfy his vengeful heart. But one day, he encountered the Buddha, who showed him compassion instead of condemnation. The Buddha did not judge or reject Angulimala but guided him to abandon hatred and learn to cherish life. Angulimala eventually became a monk, dedicating his life to compassion, refraining from violence, and helping others. This story shows the transformative power of compassion. It can turn even a violent person into someone kind and gentle. The Buddha taught that, to follow the precept against killing, we must first cultivate compassion. Every creature has the right to live, and by protecting their lives, we nurture the seed of compassion within us. The precept against killing is a remedy for cruelty, guiding us toward a peaceful and tranquil life. The second precept is to refrain from stealing. This principle goes beyond simply avoiding theft of others' possessions. It includes refraining from dishonesty or taking what does not belong to us in any form. When we steal, it is not merely an act of taking but also a betrayal of trust, disrupting the peace of both ourselves and others. The Buddha once told a story of a wealthy merchant obsessed with fear of theft. Despite his riches, he was never at ease, constantly anxious about losing his wealth. Over time, he realized that material accumulation brought no peace of mind. He began to let go, learning to share and help others. By stopping his grasping tendencies, he found inner peace and happiness. This story reminds us that greed can never bring contentment. By letting go and respecting others' belongings, we find calm in our own hearts. In today's society, we see greed and dishonesty in many areas, from work to personal relationships. Some people are willing to deceive or take what is not theirs to gain a temporary benefit. But they eventually realize that deceit brings only short-term gain, and they bear the consequences. The Buddha taught that, to avoid stealing, we must cultivate contentment and honesty. This precept helps us nurture sincerity, respect what we have, and build trustworthy relationships with those around us. The third precept is to refrain from sexual misconduct. The Buddha taught that love is sacred, and loyalty is the foundation of enduring happiness. Sexual misconduct not only brings suffering to others but also harms our spirit. There is a story of a wealthy man who was never content with his family, always seeking satisfaction elsewhere. Eventually, he lost everything. His family and friends abandoned him. Reflecting, he realized that his unbridled desires had led to the loss of his most cherished relationships. This story illustrates how unchecked desire can destroy relationships and lead to sorrow and regret. When we do not maintain fidelity, it causes distress for loved ones and leads to a lack of self-respect and trust from others. Instability in relationships creates stress and unease, leaving our minds restless. The Buddha taught that the precept against sexual misconduct helps us preserve purity, loyalty, and respect in love. When we live sincerely, nurturing love within our family, we find a life that is peaceful and enduring. The fourth precept is to refrain from lying. Lies not only harm the listener but also erode trust and respect. The Buddha taught that truthful speech is the foundation of all relationships. When we live sincerely, we earn the trust and love of those around us. The Buddha shared a story about a wealthy merchant who habitually lied to profit himself. Eventually, his lies were discovered, and he lost everyone's trust. Isolated and filled with regret, he recognized the harm his lies had caused. The Buddha taught that when we lie, the trust of others is slowly eroded, and once lost, it is nearly impossible to regain. The precept against lying is a way to preserve trust, build sincerity, and foster positive relationships. In today's world, when someone lives truthfully and avoids lies, they build trust with friends, colleagues, and family. Trust strengthens relationships and brings stability. Sincerity is the basis of a peaceful and tranquil life. The Buddha taught that refraining from lying is not just about honesty but about respecting others and oneself. When we live truthfully, we feel at ease and unburdened by deceit. The final precept is to refrain from using intoxicants. The Buddha taught that intoxicants dull the mind, leading us to lose control and easily make mistakes. Without clear mindfulness, our actions may harm ourselves and others. Long ago, there was a man who frequently drank to relieve stress. Each time he became intoxicated, he lost control, hurt his loved ones, and caused turmoil. Over time, his family broke apart, his friends distanced themselves, and he saw how intoxicants had ruined his life. The Buddha taught that intoxicants are not a solution to relieve stress but a source of suffering and loss. This precept helps us maintain mindfulness, keeping us aware of our actions and preserving the purity of our minds. In modern life, many turn to intoxicants for temporary relief, but this is often followed by severe consequences. When we remain clear-headed, we can stay calm, maintain self-control, and avoid mistakes. The Buddha taught that abstaining from intoxicants preserves mindfulness and self-control, nurturing clarity within. Dear friends, the 5 precepts are principles to protect us from suffering and enable us to live a peaceful and serene life. When we practice these precepts, we free ourselves from afflictions and contribute to building a virtuous society where everyone lives with compassion, sincerity, and love. The 5 precepts are not merely rules but pathways to true happiness, helping us maintain awareness and peace. Through these reflections, may you understand the 5 precepts more deeply and apply them in your life to find inner peace. Dear friends, today, we have journeyed together through a profound exploration of the 5 precepts. The 5 precepts are not merely rules but are reminders and ethical compasses guiding us to live righteously, to nurture compassion, and to discover inner peace within ourselves. Each of the 5 precepts is like a precious gem bestowed by the Buddha, helping us build a life free from suffering, leading to happiness and tranquility. The 5 precepts, refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and intoxicants, are the seeds of compassion, the foundation of mindfulness, and bridges connecting us to our innate goodness. Every action and thought, when done with sincerity and awareness, brings greater meaning and purity to our lives. Have you ever asked yourselves, what do we live for? Is it to attain fame, wealth, or simply to get through each day? The Buddha taught that the purpose of life is not external, but rather, a search for true happiness within. This happiness is found in peace, compassion, wisdom, in our capacity to love and forgive, and in a stillness that no storm can disturb. The 5 precepts are a way to return to ourselves, to recognize life's true value, and to live in a way that holds meaning. When we practice the 5 precepts, we are planting seeds of goodness not only for ourselves but for the entire world around us. Those who live by these principles, upholding the 5 precepts, are like candles shining in the darkness, bringing hope and faith to those who are lost. When we commit to the 5 precepts, we no longer feel adrift in life's challenges. The precepts are like a sheltering home, a refreshing stream for our souls. Observing them not only steers us away from suffering but also helps us build a life rich in meaning. Refraining from killing. This is not only about refraining from taking life but also embracing compassion. When we respect the lives of all beings, our hearts are filled with love and kindness. Every creature, no matter how big or small, has a right to life, and by protecting them, we nurture compassion in our own hearts. Refraining from stealing. More than taking material things, stealing reflects an inner dishonesty with ourselves. When we live sincerely, appreciating what we have, we never feel lacking. Honesty is the foundation of trust and peace. Refraining from sexual misconduct. This is not only about faithfulness in relationships, it represents self-control over desire. When we are honest and sincere in our relationships, we build lasting happiness. Refraining from lying. This is not only about false speech but also a way to mask insecurity. When we live in truth, we no longer need to fear or hide, and our minds remain clear and unburdened. Refraining from intoxicants. This is not merely avoiding addictive substances but about safeguarding self-awareness. Keeping our mind steady in the face of temptation. Practicing mindfulness keeps us in peace and clarity. Dear friends, the 5 precepts are not binding laws but ethical values that help us find true happiness. They are a path to enlightenment, the foundation of peace and happiness. When we practice the 5 precepts, we discover inner calm, bringing joy to ourselves and those around us. The Buddha taught that happiness doesn't come from what we possess, but from what we give. When we live with compassion, respect, and love for all life, we experience a peace that words cannot express. This peace is the priceless gift of the 5 precepts, a path back to our innate goodness, lighting the way with wisdom and compassion within our hearts. Don't let life pass by in worries and burdens. Take time to return to yourself, to practice the 5 precepts, and to feel the peace that the Buddha taught. These 5 precepts are precious jewels the Buddha left for humanity. When we embrace and cherish these gems, our lives become brighter and more beautiful. Dear friends, observing the 5 precepts is a long journey, not an easy one. but it is undoubtedly the most rewarding path. By dedicating ourselves to these precepts, we are sowing seeds of peace and happiness, not only for ourselves but for our loved ones and the entire world. Always remember the Buddha's teachings, and let compassion, sincerity, and mindfulness guide us on our journey of practice. We hope that today's journey through the 5 precepts has brought you deep insights and a sense of how to apply them in life. Remember, each small action, every word, and every thought, when done with compassion and mindfulness, is a firm step on the path to liberation and happiness. Dear friends, through today's journey, Peace and Dharma hopes to have shared the profound values of the 5 precepts, the 5 ethical guides from the Buddha. The 5 precepts are not only moral principles but a path to happiness and peace. Each precept helps us rediscover mindfulness, compassion, and sincerity in every moment of life. Practicing the 5 precepts need not be something grand or difficult. Sometimes, it's as simple as a small act, showing kindness to a tiny creature, being honest at work, cherishing and respecting loved ones, and staying steadfast against desires and anger. The 5 precepts remind us that when we live with love and mindfulness, our lives become more meaningful and peaceful. In our busy, challenging lives, the Buddha left us methods to transcend suffering and discover true happiness. Let the 5 precepts be our guiding compass, helping us live meaningfully not only for ourselves but for all beings around us. If today's teachings of the Buddha have brought you peace, don't keep it to yourself. Join Peace and Dharma in lighting the lamp of wisdom and compassion, building a community that lives in love, sincerity, and mindfulness. When each of us shares these values, the world will surely become a more vibrant and peaceful place. Peace and Dharma deeply thanks you for your time and contemplation today. May we all live in peace, compassion, and wisdom. We look forward to joining you in future reflections, where Peace and Dharma will continue to accompany you on the journey of the Buddha's teachings. Remember, every step in practice brings us closer to liberation and true happiness. Wishing you peace and joy, always.